talk about twin flame synchronicities just because it's just a bit of a cool thing to recognize within twin flame dynamics, and also just within people that aren't twin flames as well. Sorry for the stains. I'm gonna try and get them out the frame. I was gonna change my top and I thought you can't see them. But yeah, it's cool. It's a cool thing. I think you see them. I've seen them and experienced them within other twin flame sets, and also just other people overall, and just obviously with your twin, and it's just a cool sort of thing to to notice, because yeah, you've you've got, I don't want the stains to go back in the frame. You've just got cool sort of like things that happen where you notice that they're similar to you. So obviously the first one is appearance, and from, I'm not being funny, from the twins I've met, it's more and less prevalent depending on who they are, and that just is the truth really. I've noticed that sometimes certain twins' eyes look really similar, or their faces, or obviously their bodies, like physical appearance. Like I feel like the body proportions actually are similar with me and a couple of my twins. Not all of them, but there's certain sort of unique features I feel like I have within like my body type, and that's just a weird thing to say, whether it's like double jointedness or just like a feature of autism where you've got like slightly like what's the word, like just like posture differences and stuff. I feel like I've got ever like a slightly weird shape to my body and aspects, and I used to be super insecure of it, and I probably still am now, but I've just come to accept it and just try and just be like, yeah, it is what it is. And it's like those type of things that are similar in each person, and yeah, that's quite a cool thing really. And besides physical appearance, there's also like mentally and socially, psychologically, because they say that you've got a lot of like the same, like the way you operate with a twin is the same. So even though you might express it in different ways, so this is just like a really interesting point, because the way that you go about life is the same, but as I say, the way you express it will be different based on your genetics, based on your social conditioning, your nationality, your cultural beliefs and things like that. And yeah, so yeah, it's kind of, that's the way it sort of goes. But yeah, with the personality side of it, I think this can be like, there can also be massive polarities within. I just saw 333. 333 means spiritually guided. You're being spiritually guided, so I enjoy seeing that from time to time, especially when you feel in a bit of a lost place, or you feel like there's a lot of like, you know, chosen one. What's the word? Segregation, or what's the word? Individuation. You know, breaking away from other people in order to fulfill your life's path, kind of thing, and a lot of sort of turbulent experiences that can go with that to one degree or another. So yeah, but it's cool because you get, in terms of personality, sometimes there's quite a lot of like, what's the word, differences, as I say, because the thing is about twin flames is you're going to have sometimes split souls, where you've got a lot of aspects within one twin that the other one has to integrate. And when I think about it, on the twin flame journey that I have been on over 10 years, with one of my twins, I definitely think that over that period of time, I have integrated a lot of different aspects of myself within myself, because it's not about integrating them. It is to an extent, but what they're doing is they're mirroring you to you. So you might sometimes learn by copying to an an extent, or learning by interacting with them. You don't just integrate something after one day or 1 second. It takes time for that growth to occur, really, as per twin flame, divine orchestrated timeline. But it doesn't happen straight away. But yeah, I definitely think that over that 10 years of interaction, I definitely integrated sides of myself that I didn't understand, and that was partially through cultural upbringing and things like that. I wasn't necessarily conditioned into what's the word, or even I don't know if I was genetically supposed to exacerbate sides of myself that I then integrated through interacting with my twin, because they would have been probably polarized to a different, whether they were completely polarized doesn't really matter, but they would have had aspects of themselves that I hadn't integrated into myself, and then yeah, over time you each integrate those sides. Because, for example, I remember in different ways, and this is literally, it may have just been mirroring, to be honest, but I do remember, like, for example, with that same twin, there just being sides of, like, kind of, I don't really know how to describe it. It's not really worth going into detail, but it is kind of interesting. Because as I said, I never, in a previous video, I never really considered that a twin flame relationship until I actually, understood it from later on, about a year or two ago, when I came across twin flames and I realised what it was. But until then, I was just sort of on the journey without realising. I just thought, we've had our differences, but I still rate them as a friend, so whatever. But no, there's way more than that. But yeah, so but yeah, in terms of personality, I do want to go into the different aspects. Well, what else in terms of synchronicities can there be? Life experiences, that's a massive synchronistic experience that you can have with twins, and it's usually sometimes polarized between twins, but often they're similar. It's more similarity kind of synchronicities, but sometimes there can be times when I talk about polarities, you can have one twin that's had a very sort of like rough, no, not necessarily rough upbringing, but like a lot of, say, antisocial behaviour in their upbringing, a lot of overt antisocial behaviour, and then you might get another twin that was like a complete goody-goody, and that is the sort of polarity in terms of like, what's the word, upbringing and synchronicity. But then obviously it's not to say, like, but as I say, it's soul splitting, and it will have been orchestrated that way, that one twin has had to exhibit and experience a whole load of things which predisposed them to this sort of side of exposure and what's the word, like, development, and the other twin will have gone through a whole load of other stuff and repression and oppression to integrate a whole load of this stuff into their personality for a specific purpose. And it's about bringing those sides out of each other and integrating those both aspects, because at the end of the day they're both kind of polarized experiences, and it's at each end of the spectrum kind of experiences, to be very oppressed and goody-goody, and to be very, very overtly antisocial at times, when, in terms of what might be socially acceptable in certain ways, they're quite opposite ends of the spectrum. And this person can bring out that sort of element of expression within the more oppressed person. The more oppressed person can bring peace and quiet and serenity and self kind of validation and peace to this person that may look externally. It's not to say that you don't still have to do your own twin flame work and to look internally and to heal internally in order to find and to connect with source, in order to heal all your triggers, and not to externalize things and not to internalize things. And that can also be a factor. If you get one twin that's been very, very programmed to internalize things, and you've got another twin that's very, very programmed to externalize things, or even an introvert or an extrovert, those issues will be will be there for a reason, and there'll be some sort of purpose as to why you've got those contrasting experiences, you know. Because if you look at someone, for example, that's not a twin flame, or someone that isn't going through a twin flame experience, it's likely they won't be highly antisocial, and they won't be highly oppressed. They won't be a complete extrovert of the extroverts, or a completely introvert of the introverts. If they're an introvert, they're able to socialize like an extrovert, and if they're an extrovert, they're able to socialize like an introvert, you know. But twin flames, the reason that they're here and the reason that they've integrated, they incarnate this way, is actually because they are designed to bring that out within each other, and that's the way that they are supposed to work. And that is how they're designed, and that's their sole purpose, that's their sole desire, you know, for that to happen. And that's why those polarities and synchronicities do exist. So yeah, I'm just trying to think. So yeah, appearance wise, sometimes belief systems as well, and yeah. So I've heard that twins often have similar, if they're your quote unquote, I don't like hearing if they're your false twin, whatever this next. I was told very, very early not to question if someone's your twin, and I'm not being funny, because I've been on a twin flame journey for 10 years already. I never had this are they, aren't they, like I kind of recognised it already, you know, from what I'd experienced in the past, and I knew they were my twin from like day of nil, to be honest with you. I just definitely didn't know consciously what it was, but I recognised the dynamic from previous experience massively, and that was never really a doubt, to be honest. So yeah, I think just trying to think. So oh yeah, belief systems. So I've heard that if you have a true twin flame, that they're going to have the same not goals, but belief systems as you. I don't think it's necessarily belief system. I think it's a bit like the same. I wouldn't say it's the same belief systems, because that's kind of, as I say, all part of the meat of twin flames, is to accept someone else's opinion and to integrate that is their opinion, and not. And I've noticed this is quite a common thing within twins, is that they're not always able to hold space for other people. And I think it was something I actually had to learn through, and I'm still probably not amazing at, I can't lie. I go through this like I've heard this is also very common, to blow shit up, basically, to like emotionally and psychologically blow shit up when they're uncomfortable, because it's like, oh, if I can fuck it all up, then I can't lose, you know. I'm gonna fuck it up before it fucks me up, you know, before it hurts me. Like, this is very, very common within twin flames overall. And you know, that is, as I say, why you're a twin flame, pretty much, because that's what twin flames are here to heal. And as I say, it's like, it's not always what is the most obvious, like, for people that aren't on a twin flame journey. It's just the common fact of, usually you don't get people blowing shit up left, right, center. I'm not talking about physically blowing shit up, you know, with actual firearms. I'm talking about like blowing shit up psychologically and ruining things, you know. It's not always what people do if they're not on a twin flame journey. I'm not saying that you can't do that if you aren't on a twin flame journey, but it's very, very common, I think, on a twin flame journey, because you are actually just so telepathically connected to your twin that you're so tuned in, shall I say, to there being someone else on a synchronistic experience to you. Like, I do think that with one of my twins, and actually now several of them, I do think I've gone through experience and periods of time that I've been very sort of exposed to things that were embarrassing or shameful, and that has made me feel more comfortable with my own shame, it's got to be said. So it's not about having necessarily an excess of shame and internalizing things that create shame within you, but it's like to like be on that place of, you know, in that place of like, I'm just trying to think. So, but yeah, it helps you become more comfortable with shame, and it helps you become more comfortable in the very things that are humanity, you know, and that what embodies humanity. You know, often twins have extremely, as I've mentioned in other videos, traumatic life experiences and very difficult life paths, just as I've already explained that everyone does in their own personal degree. You know, even if they're not on the streets smoking crack all night, they may well be in a very, very difficult high-end job, which involves a very important job, potentially, not always, but sometimes you can be a CEO of something very, very important that if it didn't work, it wouldn't function in humanity very, very well. Some very massive leader in management of some massive bloody supermarket chain, making a lot of money and putting in a lot of hard hours. You know, we all have our relative struggles, don't we know it? You know, as I've well explained in past videos. Everyone, and that's part of been something that I've had to recognise and clear the collective. But it's all relative, and I suppose another thing about that, just as a little tiny tangent, is that people at the top often it trickles down from the top often in this very sort of white collar hierarchy level of when people are at the top. There's often a lot of access to a lot of money, there's often access to a lot of pies, and therefore there's a lot of greed and ability to whirlwind into this sort of very entitled and excessive level of sort of, you know, what's the word, entitlement, shall I say. So people in maybe less privileged positions probably aren't in the worst boat ever if they are entitled to one sense or another, because people higher up will take a liberty if they are given the way of being able to do that. So synchronicities, belief systems, family belief systems, life belief systems, life experiences that created those family belief systems and life belief systems. For example, I think it's useful and fun to use examples, you know. So I think, for example, one of my twins, I don't think went to a great deal of public school because it didn't go well with them. It's a different time. It wasn't the time where you'd get rulered, but they clearly evolved past the concept of school earlier than I did. I probably evolved past the concept of school at some point. I had to say I was goody-goody, and it's a lot easier for kids to hide things like autism, especially when they're females. They just hide behind a book and act a bit anxious. No one really bothers to care. So, hang on. So, yeah, having said that, they didn't really do much schooling, to be fair. So, I did find this sort of, so I did find this kind of interesting to know, because obviously I felt like in my oppression level that school was very important, you know, and that was something that I sort of went to escape my stressful home life and my sexual traumas and stuff like that, you know, and that was a safe space for me. So I had a lot of stigma around school, possibly more than it deserves, you know, a lot of you know, good feelings towards it and things like that. So but yeah, it was to the point where, like, I was probably giving school more of a good rep than it actually deserves in totality, to be honest, because at the end of the day it's still just a system filled with people doing their jobs. Yes, you know, it was a safe space for me, but it doesn't mean that I have to go around the world with this very A1 mindset all the time and actually not leave enough space in my brain for other aspects of life that, you know, they don't teach in school and you're not exposed to, you know. Not to say I should be trying to run myself in with people that I've got no business being, but, you know, it's like, it just sort of depends. So that was one of the triggers, and probably a lot actually of the triggers, but also transcending experiences and transcending aspects that I, through mainly, well, I wouldn't say much during the honeymoon period, but during the first separations, found that was a big thing that came up for me, surrounding school and depression in that way, and how much weight to give to school and what other people thought of me and adults and what they expected and how much I deserved to do, how much I need to run myself into the ground to meet the needs of those people and things like that. Was it because, you know, my safety, feeling that my safety was at school, and then, you know, and then sort of, what's the word, tying my safety to a place, you know, and then that wasn't functional, and then sort of applying far too much the idea of schooling and the way that those sort of, what's the word, those sort of systems work into the real world, when really a lot more encompasses the world than this very structured school system that, you know, may not well be serving me or anyone else to be carrying that template forward, you know. So yeah, that is also interesting. So yeah, and that comes with belief systems, but from that and that's another whole, you know, paradigm again of the twin flame relationship. I don't think I've really spoken about this. Is that often and almost always in this particular one of my twins situation, I felt, but probably all of them to one extent or another, is that I felt like, especially with one of my twins, felt like I've been dragged through a hedge backwards with the experiences I've had. Not literally, I'm not advocating physical abuse in relationships at all, you know, but I have felt psychologically like I've been dragged through a hedge backwards, but that has been what's transcended me in situations and what's actually helped me to grow in the areas I've needed to grow and understand parts of life that I've needed to understand, and have those triggers come up in those places that needed to come up in those places, you know. And that is such a bizarre thing, but it's so real in the twin flame relationship. That is always the case. That happens. And sometimes people are in separation during that whole experience, and I think this is where I think there's this massive thing that I know from being a twin flame, that just because there's one person sat at home trying to do the work, trying to understand the relationship, trying to heal the relationship, and then there's some other twin gallivanting off in some other relationship. They might be married, they might have been married for several years, they might have told their twin to leave them alone so many times, and everyone around them is like, leave them alone, they're off getting married, let them go. It is what it is. If you're a twin flame, you know that you can't just let your twin go. You may not be in contact with them for the rest of your life if they so choose, because they've got free will, but you don't just let them go, because that's not how it goes in a twin flame relationship. You don't just let them go. They're not a karmic relationship, so get it fucking right before you start coming at me, you know what I mean? So anyway, yeah, so yeah, that is also true. But yeah, in terms of synchronistic belief systems and experiences, it's not, so there may be a synchronicity there, as I say, but it's also can be a polarizing synchronicity. So I was a complete goody-goody at school, but they didn't even go to school at all because they didn't see much point in it. And that is a polarized synchronicity. Would you call it a synchronicity? Yeah, I would call it a polarized synchronicity, you know. But it's also from that aspect of split souls, which can be a partial aspect of a type of twin flame. Where I have done whole video on type of twin flames where I talk about this. You can be a split soul, not twin soul. It's not what I'm talking about. Split soul, and and through that you can have aspects, as I say, of one twin. The other twin needs to integrate in one aspect, and one twin, the other twin needs to integrate. And depending, I've noticed as well in terms of dynamics and differences and how they present, and they are different in every single twin flame dynamic, depending on whether you're the feminine or the masculine, the male or the female, your life experiences, whether you're an introvert, extrovert, whatever. Obviously, that will create your nationality, how you've been socialized through your nationality and through your origins of life. That will all play a factor on how you present and how you represent yourself. But I have also noticed, just to put another side in there, is that repression and experiences of of repressed, what's the word, genetic formations of nationality expression, shall we say. So you may have some grandparent that's Lithuanian or something, but because you were socialized in a German household, you will repress that Lithuanian side of yourself. But your twin may not have done, and usually won't have done, and will be very expressive in that area. Your twin might be, so that is just also what can happen. so yeah, and that's very, 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 very common as well. So it doesn't always, what kind of, it's the irony of twin flames, really, that and also this is again the nature of twin flames, which is within the dynamic and during the separation phase and the reunion phases, and hopefully the permanent reunion to harmonious union period as well, there can be polarities basically that are brought about by different life experiences, and they're not always wrapped up in a nice neat box with a bow to say, oh look, I've got all these experiences, oh well, I have all these experiences. It can happen this way, and this is why I'll talk about with negative contrast. With contrast comes a level of contrast, right? With an experience comes a level of contrast. With one polarity comes another polarity. So in terms of functionality and actually, evolution, okay, and things like that, you may get one twin, right, that is very narcissistic, and this is often the case, and you may get one twin that is very self-directed and independent. I mean, can you say if you're independent you're a narcissist? Who knows? But you may get one twin